Can virtue actually be vice? This is the lesson that Gregory the Great in his Moralia teaches us. That might seem like a weird question. Stick with me for a couple minutes, and I think it'll make sense, and I also think it will help you live your life in a more full and flourishing way. So in Gregory's Moralia, which is really a commentary on the book of Job that looks at the moral, factors in this book and in our life, Gregory the Great, he says there are a number of sneaky vices that put on false faces of virtues. This is in book 3 of his Moralia. And he says, for example, inordinate anger pretends to be justice. So sometimes you think, oh, I have justice on my side, but actually you're just given into the passion of anger. All of us know that we've spoken out of turn when we thought we were right, and it actually turns out we were wrong. We have careless laxity often disguises itself as mercy. So sometimes you're like, well, I'm very merciful, and you're not working hard, and you're serving someone else, or perhaps you're allowing justice to be slack. Now there are things like that, but here's where it gets really interesting. He says vague fear often shows up as humility, whereas unbridled pride tries to appear as freedom. Vague fear, this sort of anxious undercutting fear, shows up as humility. Oh, I'm not good enough to do that. Surely I couldn't possibly do that. But it's not so much humility as it is sort of vague, undefined, irrational fear. Unbridled pride, meaning pride that's not under control, could be freedom. I have the freedom to my rights. I can do whatever I want. You can't stop me. All that kind of stuff. So Gregory says, when Job's friends come for consolation, but they attack him with words. Now, when they attack him, there's something going on here. It seems like these are vicious attacks, even though they're coming to show mercy and console him. Like, what's going on here? Well, he says, obviously there are vices wearing the masks of virtue. They begin their speech with flattery. Then they start trouble by bitter contradiction. They had agreed to come together to visit him. And then Gregory analogizes, vices under the appearance of virtue agree with one another. Those things hostile to us join together in a kind of convenient fellowship, such as pride and anger, laxity and fear. Anger is neighbor to pride, and laxity to fear. They agree together to come against us. They are against us, but they are cronies in a kind of togetherness that is perverse. Nevertheless, if we are mindful of the desert in which we are held captive, if we mourn internally for love of our eternal fatherland, the vices that sneak up on those whose joy is inept cannot prevail over those who mourn as they should. He goes on, but there's two things I just want to highlight here that I think are going to be very important for your life. One is, a lot of times what appears to be virtue, what appears to be good, could be a mask for vice. If you're so humble that you can't help someone, if you're so humble that you can't be lending assistance or do the right thing, it might be because you're actually under the sway of vice, the vice of fear. It might be the case that you're so compassionate, you're maybe always trying to help people, but you're never actually saying, hey, I'm going to help you get back on track, or going to help you, but you never help them get back on track towards justice. So they continue in a pattern of self-destruction, and all you're doing is elevating them. But what makes this even worse is that if you allow these undefined, irrational, uncontrolled vices to be there, well, what ends up happening is that these vices come together in pairs. So you'll maybe be an angry person. You're angry at the injustice of the world, and you're sure that you're just, even if your words are not and your passions are not controlled by justice. But very soon, anger will bring along its neighbors. Let's say laxity or cruelness or unkindness or all sorts of things. It's almost like a communicable disease. You have sickness in the shoulder that goes down to the heart, that goes down to the torso, that goes down to the leg. It's a sort of gangrene that works through your body. Now, all of this is on the assumption that vice as a thing, as a moral evil, is contagious, contained in you, part of you, maybe accidentally, but it's still there. Whereas, by contrast, vice is, I guess by analogy, also a communicable disease, except for it's a healing one. and it reverses those things. So if you struggle with all sorts of vice, if you struggle with all sorts of things, laxity and anger and so on, part of it might be that you are believing you're doing the right thing by being merciful, perhaps to a degree, but you're forgetting to pursue justice. And if you give up one thing for another, then the neighbors of vice will come and crowd your soul. There has to be a sort of complete renovation, a sort of complete analysis of what you are doing. You could be angry at injustice all day, but as you do it, you realize that your heart is becoming despairing and bitter. Maybe it's right to be angry at the injustice, but it's wrong to let it control you in such a way that these vices as neighbors crowd in. This is such an important principle. I think all of us can understand what's going on. Maybe we're with friends when we're younger and they're doing the wrong thing, and we're trying to be good friends to them so we don't actually say anything. But at the end of the day, then you're just compromised and allowing injustice to continue. See, that's out of a vague fear, a sort of fear of rejection, a fear of what might happen if you do the right thing. We do this all the time. In marriage, it's possible to have an underlying problem in your marriage and just never confront it because there's a fear there, and if you do confront it, what might happen? And then you actually allow it to get worse, and vice comes across your entire marriage. It can happen in parenting. It can happen in all sorts of categories. I want to help you to not live in that way, and so does Gregory the Great in his Moralia. Here's an image of the book. You can order it. It's kind of an expensive one, unfortunately. Or you can just learn Latin, and then you can just find a free copy of it online. If you enjoyed this video, please like. I don't know if you actually have to like. Please subscribe at least. I think you have to hit the bell thing to see my notifications. It would be a huge help to me. I would love it if you did subscribe. Kind of helps me to stay motivated, but it also shows that these videos are of use to others. I don't want to record into the oblivion. I do think that restoring or retrieving past wisdom for human flourishing today is vitally important for life the older I get. So if you enjoy this video, subscribe, hit the bell if that's still a thing on YouTube, and leave a comment so I know that you are listening. Thank you so much.